Right, so let's get going. Well, welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here today. I was at the Portland user group back in October 2018. Todd and I did a West Coast tour. That was a lot of fun. I hear Portland is a horrible place to be right now, though, so I won't try to come up there. I am very glad to be here to talk about JavaScript and just how we are seeing JavaScript in the FileMaker community nowadays. If you have any questions as I talk, just interrupt me because I'm focusing on my screen. It's hard to see the speakers. Feel free to also chat it, and I've got the chat window off to the side, and hopefully I can pick those up as well. And Matt and everybody, anyone else, just stop me if there's a lot of questions that come through. But I really would love to have a ton of questions. I can talk for a long time, but I would love to hear what you all have to say about this as well. I liked hearing about using JavaScript. I'd love to hear that more. So let's talk through it. So JavaScript learning path. So I've been on this big kick for quite a few years now about using JavaScript in FileMaker, and I recently did talk to a user group, My JavaScript Journey, and I realized I was still probably only, I don't know, it's 5 or 6 or 7 years into my FileMaker development before I got into JavaScript. So I wasn't the most expert FileMaker developer, but I got into JavaScript and I found what I could, really do there. So that was back in 2016 when I was at Selenium Consulting. I first worked on a little file that showed different web viewer integrations, I called them. And it was just my attempt to understand how to use JavaScript in FileMaker. And really, I know that people like Todd and Chris Ippolite and Matt Petrowski and others have talked about JavaScript for such a long time, but for some reason, it's just part of what we're talking about today. This is what I want to get through, hopefully today, and really discuss. So let's get going. We all now, Matt said this at the beginning, that JavaScript is now eating the FileMaker world. It's really a big part of our development now, just like virtual lists was when that technique was first discovered, just like, insert from URL, all that stuff. You all can hear me fine, right? Yeah.
Yep, we are all muted, by the way, so just as a reminder to everyone, if you want to say something, you'll need to unmute real quick.
All right, good.
Also, one other thing, there's a keyboard shortcut in Zoom. You can just hold the spacebar and talk, and it'll unmute you only while the spacebar is being held.
Oh, nice.
Tips for the day.
Not me, though. So FileMaker is really now starting to embrace the JavaScript idea. JavaScript is, it's been around a long time. It's a mature language. It is maybe going to be replaced by something else in the future. One of the people known for JavaScript learning development, he's on the committee that adds stuff to the language. Douglas Crockford says, "I hope JavaScript is not the last language because it's not a perfect language." But I think here now right now in FileMaker 19 2020. We as developers can jump on it. FileMaker 19, as we all know, introduced a ton of new features, 3 new features specifically that really help us, give us more reason to use JavaScript in our FileMaker development. On the top left there, they gave us a script step that can communicate to a JavaScript set of code in the web viewer browser. We have that perform JavaScript in a web viewer. Where we just pass it the name, we have the web viewer, we pass it a function name that's in the JavaScript and some parameters possibly, and we can get a FileMaker script to run something in JavaScript. That was not, it was possible before. Todd had built a web viewer bridge that we used, but it didn't work in WebDirect, didn't work well on Windows. This script step overcame almost all of those issues. So we threw away the bridge because this is the best way to go. Over on the right there, we have the add-ons. FileMaker, the next update we've seen many times. We've in Claris Engage and in other webinars, we've heard a lot about the JavaScript add-ons. We've heard a lot about add-ons. There's a lot of JavaScript ones. Geist Interactive was lucky enough to build them for the in-product versions that are coming out soon. This is a timeline. This is, add-ons are a great way to use JavaScript and build something that's a complete piece of functionality, add some cool things like this timeline here, and just open up the layout, the design possibilities. And then in the bottom left there, we have a new function for JavaScript. It's not in the JavaScript language. It's added to a JavaScript library that the FileMaker product kind of injects into our web viewer. But they added a function called FileMaker.performScript, where we can tell JavaScript to find a script in this local file, passing it some parameters, in this case, just an object, a JSON object, and work with it in FileMaker. So these three things have really upped our reason for using JavaScript and maybe even our urgency. There's a lot of developers out there that are really spending time on JavaScript. I recently looked at the FileMaker community for a search for all the posts that use the word JavaScript. This is a post, kind of a little timeline of the number of posts. Just in the past, couple years, actually, more than half of the questions, it seems, have come from FileMaker developers. So we're really starting to explore. I see them every day, people asking great questions about the JavaScript language. So I'm really happy that people are exploring it. And I think they're exploring it because they see the possibility of what I can build with JavaScript, whether it's a JavaScript library or just using the language itself to calculate, do a calculation or process an array. There's really a lot of possibilities, and we FileMaker developers are seeing that. I know when I started, I don't know how it was when Petrowski or Todd or Chris were talking, or the others were talking about it, but when I first started this in 2016, I was getting a lot of resistance about it, about let's just stick to FileMaker layouts, let's just stick to FileMaker charts or list views or whatever. And that resistance has pretty much faded away at this point because we see the ease of use, and we see the ease of use of using JavaScript and JavaScript libraries. The problem for many of us developers is that, we don't know exactly what to learn or where to learn it. So we struggle with that idea. There's so much out there. In fact, I just did a quick survey of just different learning sites. There's a ton of learning sites out there. This is just a fraction of them where you can go and learn JavaScript. And they're all really great. They all have complete courses in JavaScript, maybe their own flavor of working with JavaScript, but there's a ton of stuff out there. So that there's a lot of sites out there, and they are the complete JavaScript language. They may be broken into beginner and intermediate and advanced JavaScript, but they are complete packages of JavaScript. And I don't know about you. Well, here's actually a diagram of a complete JavaScript path. I got to turn this off. Someone put this journey through JavaScript out, and I think it's really great. They talk about everything that you could learn in the JavaScript, the HTML, CSS world. Sorry about that. There's a ton of stuff here. There's some more stuff here. And there's some more stuff here. More stuff to learn. There's some more stuff to learn here. So this, I don't know about you, but this seems like quite a lot. There's just a lot of stuff here. And when I looked at this, even though I know I have an idea of JavaScript, I felt quite overwhelmed about what all I would have to learn to use JavaScript in my development work, the work that I do. And I feel like that's a lot of reason this kind of is a picture of one of the reasons people don't want to focus on JavaScript in the FileMaker world, because there's just possibly too much to learn. We as FileMaker developers, we don't really have time. We have to focus on our FileMaker tasks. Actually, we have to build layouts and scripts and schema to handle our daily work that we do. We don't have, my brain power is not limited. By 4 o'clock or so, my brain is shot for the day, because I've been focusing on, in my case, content creation, or your case, solving use cases and getting tasks done. So we don't have as much brain power maybe as we would like, and our time is fairly limited. We have lives, we have families and dogs to take care of. We just don't have time to work all day in FileMaker and then spend 3 or 4 hours a night learning JavaScript. So I was there. This was definitely my dilemma for a while. I'm one of those, and I know many of you out there right now who are this way for sure. I was kind of stubborn, and I would just spend hours and hours and hours understanding JavaScript, trying to play with it and figure it out. But a lot of us don't have time, and there's no shade on anybody who doesn't want to spend a whole lot of time learning this. So with here at Geist Interactive, we use JavaScript a lot. I talk about it most days with Todd. It occurred to me one time that we don't actually need to know everything about JavaScript in order to be successful in our FileMaker work right now. We don't need to know every single thing. We don't need to know about JavaScript classes or all of the different ways to work with variables in JavaScript. There's a very limited set of knowledge that we can pick out of any JavaScript course, and we can learn and be successful with right now, or within a couple of hours at least, at the very least, with what we can do in FileMaker. So this mind map kind of thing, this JavaScript learning path kind of thing that I'm showing here, displays what I think and what has been my experience as a FileMaker developer to learn JavaScript, in a meaningful way. This can cut through everything that all of those courses that I showed talks about, and you can find the videos that work with these items. And I actually went backwards. Over on the far right, you can see very technical JavaScript things over there, like arrow, normal, anonymous functions, map for each, and so forth. And don't worry, Matt and Alexi are telling me that it's hard to read them. We'll zoom in on some of this, and I'll get specific in this in a little bit. So I'm just trying to give you the overall picture, and you can always get this image from my site as well. But the stuff on the right actually, is that right? Yeah, that's right. is the JavaScript stuff. But I went backwards and I said, what use cases, general concepts does those technical JavaScript things solve for us? And one of the things is that every day we build structures, scripts, buttons, and stuff to perform actions in FileMaker. We write a ton of scripts every single day so that users can interact with the data in some way, and with the screen and so forth. Well, JavaScript does the same thing. So what I tried to do on that top arrow there, the top path there, is point out that which in JavaScript helps us to solve those use cases, to perform actions in this case. So I've just listed a few things that are vital for us to know right now. We need to know how to write functions in JavaScript like day one. We need to know how to declare them and call them, and we need to know how to work with parameters. So this is one of the use cases that I've found. The next one is the manipulating data. This is by far the biggest because we're working with data from FileMaker. Ideally, we're sending it to a JavaScript piece of code, app, a library, or whatever, and we're asking the JavaScript to work with the data and make it fit how we want to present it. So we need to know how to manipulate the data. We need to know how, I'll show you some very specific examples of this coming up here, but I just wanted to kind of give this point out. We do this in FileMaker, so we can do it in JavaScript. And here are the things you can learn to solve this use case when you know you have to manipulate data. And the other three are loading data, retrieving data, and updating the screen down there at the bottom. We build scripts to hide and show things on the screen or to show new sets of data. We can do the same thing with a web viewer. And so we need to know those JavaScript skills that will help us do those things. Let's see here. The purpose of this, I kind of went over it, kind of talked about it, is to really focus our attention on what we need right now. We as FileMaker developers with limited time, we can use this path to this stuff that I've identified to focus on what we need. It keeps our learning tied to normal FileMaker use cases. None of this stuff is stuff that we don't do often. We get data from somewhere, we push it into fields in FileMaker. Here we're pushing it into a JavaScript app, updating the screen, updating the layout and such. And it just, this stuff that I've demonstrated, again, I'll go into details in a minute, but this gives us the biggest return on our investment. If we spend time studying this stuff, then we can do awesome things in a JavaScript app, in a web viewer, quicker than if we decided to take a whole course, you know, on LinkedIn Learning, and then was like, how do I apply this to what I'm doing? You know, again, this all comes from my experience. I'm just an average normal FileMaker developer, but I've been able to leverage some JavaScript stuff to do good things for clients, and I can show some of that. I'll show some of that here. So that's our goal with this. My goal with this is to really allow every one of us here to pick up a map and know what I can study in FileMaker, know what you can study in JavaScript, so that you can do something pretty cool pretty quickly. Any thoughts, any questions on that right now?
I love the focus of this because it's really, really useful information for those of us who want to learn how to use JavaScript. This is great. So I just want to just say thank you. Throw that out there.
Cool. Any other thoughts by anybody else so far? All right. Well, I'll keep on going. We'll definitely get into specifics in a little bit. So I went over this too fast, but here are the main actions that we do in FileMaker every day. So this is how I chose to group the JavaScript techniques and concepts. And I actually don't know if I don't think I may not have every single thing. I'm always reaching out to JavaScript developers in the FileMaker world to say, hey, did I miss anything? And as the JavaScript language progresses, we'll have to add different stuff to this, remove other stuff that doesn't make sense anymore. So this is a good example here. I displayed this in my Claris Engage session, but on JavaScript libraries. But this is and I'll get into the nitty gritty of this in a bit, but this is an example of me, a FileMaker developer, using my JavaScript skills, not complete JavaScript skills, but my basic JavaScript skills to create one of these sliders per question that I have in a table in my database. So I can, rather than just having someone type in a number for a question, I can use this cool, some JavaScript, some CSS to make it look good and to provide a better user experience. I am in no way an expert, 20 years of experience in JavaScript, but I can build this because I know the basics, and the basics, everything that was on that mind map helped me to create this. It was late one night and it took me a couple hours to get it right, but I still was able to persevere. And, you know, just imagine trying to build something like this using FileMaker. No shade to FileMaker, but this just provides a whole new opportunity for us to provide awesome interactions with our clients. And it's relatively simple to do. So I want to switch, I want to talk a little bit more about, or I want to mention JavaScript libraries. We're still in Keynote. We're going to get into FileMaker in a bit, but this is a library that I love, Apex Charts, that allows me to chart data on a graph there. And I went to extreme lengths on this. I changed the colors. I changed the stroke, the dotted lines. I'm sure you know, any design person would be aghast at this, but it was just fun to manipulate it. This is what the JavaScript library looks like. It's at least part of it. But this code right here, all of this code, I have no idea what any of this code means. I don't really care, because all of this can produce this. This library, this minified code, there's very few spaces actually, if any. They are, this runs everything that you see in the chart. And this is one thing we can focus on as well, is not only the specific skills of JavaScript, but working with these JavaScript libraries as well. And again, we'll demonstrate that. So here it is. Every JavaScript library out there provides some sort of options that we can use to work with that library. This is an example of an option for the Apex chart here. And as you look at it as FileMaker developers, you can kind of walk through this and understand it. You see a chart key there, and you see it is an object, and there's a property called type right there, and it says line. So these options are producing that chart back here. And as a FileMaker, as any kind of developer, no matter what, I can update this information. So here's the options, and again, we'll play with some in detail in a little bit. These are some options that I can work with. Here is this formatting went off, but here is some data. So notice this is actually coming from the new FileMaker execute FileMaker data API script step from FileMaker. It's collecting data from a table, and it's creating an array of objects for each record in that found set. So I can take all of this data from FileMaker, and I can specifically plot that information in here. I don't have to worry about very much of this. Notice that in the middle there, it says the date is 04-30-2019. Okay, so that's the date. But if we look over here, I have it, and on the x-axis there, I have it formatted differently than what the data is from FileMaker. FileMaker is very limited in its date, display, at least holding a date in a field. And, but this JavaScript library can update that. Then if I were to go into the options here and change some options, back in the other display, it was type was line and stacked was false. Well, I'm updating them to say, I want you to display a bar, and I want you to stack them true. This is what I can produce with the exact same data. So focusing on JavaScript and focusing on libraries really helps us to produce some amazing things for our clients. To me, power to the problem solvers, that awesome phrase that Claris uses. This is part of that power. And I think this is a superpower, but easily reachable by anybody. Anything in here, any FileMaker developer can study and understand. None of this is beyond our skills because we actually are programmers. Oh, are we not having, sorry, I made my screen as small as, or as big as possible. So sorry about that, Kimberly and everybody else. Does it look really small to you all over there? My screen?
Probably depends on how big people's actual monitors are. Mine's fairly large, so I can see it just fine.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. I did change my resolution to be, smaller because my screen is pretty large. So I wanted to bring it down a bit, but, so this is accessible to any FileMaker developer because we are programmers. We have programming knowledge to help us with this. We all know what variables are. We all know what scope is, local versus global variables. We all know how to pass parameters to and from scripts and receive parameters. So all of this stuff is doable. There are some technical things. Sorry, Alexi, I'm sorry about that. There are some technical things that we do need to study that are kind of, divorced from our FileMaker development. We don't really have an idea of IDs or JavaScript or CSS classes so much. Tagging and the DOM itself is a little bit new to us. So I put this on the far left side because these are the technical things that are really part of the whole HTML experience. So this is stuff that we have to learn, but it's not undoable. Here is some technical CSS stuff, some styling that is important to know. We can do some styling in FileMaker, but FileMaker actually really separates the CSS layer from us. And so we're not really privy to that in our normal development. So we do need to focus on some technical stuff here. So this is where we are at. We are at with giving FileMaker developers an easy path into the JavaScript world without overwhelming them. I would love to hear from people's experiences, but those of you who have taken JavaScript courses, have you been able to, what do you feel about those compared to what you're actually doing? Are you able to apply everything that you've learned, or has it been sort of hit and miss? Has anybody taken a course in JavaScript that they can share about?
One thing I noticed, I'm taking a Udemy course right now for JavaScript, and it's just kind of like you said. I have some developers that work for me, and they don't want to get into JavaScript. They've been developing in FileMaker for a very long time, and that's what they're very comfortable with and all they want to do. But they've got it in their mind that it's this really complex thing. And as I've been taking this Udemy course, I've realized, like you said, that just from learning FileMaker, I mean, even if I didn't take any Python or anything like that in the past, which I have, I would feel a certain level of comfortability because of what I've learned in FileMaker, just with like passing a variable to a function or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just getting your feet wet.
Yep. And I think to me, I'll let other people speak here. To me, once you have seen that this is doable, you can then go and take an entire course of JavaScript and kind of fill in any gaps that may be in here. I don't think there are any gaps that would prevent you from being a good FileMaker, JavaScript in FileMaker developer, but you could definitely fill it out. So anybody else have any other experience using a JavaScript course? Were you able to apply what you learned right away, or did you feel like you didn't know what to pick from the course?
I've taken a few JavaScript courses myself, and yeah, I'd have to say, like, kind of what Matt said about really transitioning your learning of what you know in FileMaker pretty well, and sort of applying that to like functions and stuff. Like a lot of the syntax is a little bit different, but like the concepts are pretty similar.
Yep.
So like I've taken some courses from Scott Talinsky. His website's called leveluptuts.com. And he's got like a ton of different stuff. He's just like a video creating expert. So he's, but just like some of the courses I've taken with him have been really like super useful in like translating like with like working with arrays. It's like, okay, this is just like a list, and iterating through is like kind of similar to how FileMaker does it. But so it's super helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I have some similar experience. I've played around with an app that is just like this little quiz. It's sort of like a quiz game. It's actually made by Google. It's called Grasshopper, and it's just sort of runs you through really basic concepts. And what I've started to realize is really, if you are comfortable and familiar with complex FileMaker scripting, it's the same thing. It's just literally a different language. And it's just like, you're doing the same kinds of things, looping it through an array, and, it's passing, making functions, which are just basically smaller scripts. And it's the same thing. It's just a slightly different language. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it and start to really see it in the same way that you can read a FileMaker script.
And I think that's the purpose of this map up here, is to really kind of it's kind of to link the two, JavaScript and FileMaker, together. When we need to manipulate data in a FileMaker script, you're right, we're manipulating objects, we're manipulating arrays or dates or numbers or strings. And we may have to go through every element of an array, or all of the properties. We may have to extract properties from objects. So we do this stuff already in FileMaker. It's just looking at it from the JavaScript perspective and using the actual built-in JavaScript functions that are there, that the browser will read and understand and then do. So yeah, that, in all of my time with this, I've been lucky enough to do some trainings at DevCon, and my goal has always been, and I think I'm getting better at it, is to connect what we do right now with how JavaScript works. There's quite some differences, but it's not unreachable to any of us. Laura, you said you've taken a short course on an app on my phone, Solo Learn, which was very easy to do whenever. So Laura, are you able to apply some of that stuff to your FileMaker work, or does it feel like it's isolated? You can either chat or speak up here. I know for me, that's where I was. So this is the kind of stuff that I kept coming back to as I was building those add-ons. I'll show you specifically in a minute here, but as building those add-ons, as I was, working with Todd and products and such, this is the stuff that I kept coming back to. So I thought, hey, you know what? If I can learn it, so can every FileMaker developer, given a little bit of time. All right, so my goal, I'm a former teacher, if you don't know. I taught elementary to middle school for 15 years and then moved into the FileMaker world after, building the FileMaker app at my school. But I've always been interested in helping people learn topics. I love teaching 5th grade students how to do long division. I loved helping them see the concepts behind that and helping them understand why numbers are square or the factors of numbers and so forth. So that's kind of where I see myself as a FileMaker developer in this world. And so I've put together this JavaScript Learning Path FileMaker file, and you may have downloaded it already, but it's on my site. But this goes through, at the moment, 47 exercises, some for each of the use cases that I mentioned there on the left, that focuses on just one or so pieces of the JavaScript language. and keeps it. I like the fact that this keeps it in FileMaker because we're going to be working with that web viewer that's kind of a pain in the butt in IE 11 on Windows for Windows users. So it's nice that it keeps it in here because you're always experiencing the few remaining issues of the web viewer in a FileMaker app. But in upcoming trainings, actually I have some out right now, and in upcoming trainings, this is how I would walk through any FileMaker developer to learn the basic workings of JavaScript. And all of this stuff right here, all of this stuff is stuff that I've used in my own work in clients and in those add-ons and so forth to help me, produce something that works. So I call it, well, actually I don't call it the JS Playground anymore. I forgot to update that. It's the JS Learning Path file. I'm going to get into that here, but this is how I teach it. Now, no one has to follow this and do this. They could simply take a path, take my path and go find their own JavaScript course and study that, the parts of the course which are identified here, at least in, in technique or concept, and study how Wes Bos would teach it, or the LinkedIn Learning courses or whatever. I just give my experience and then try to build some exercises. And again, I like this, that it's in FileMaker, because a lot of these exercises will actually use FileMaker from data in the FileMaker app. It will actually, use the new script step and the new JavaScript functions. So I encourage you to, if you want to start to learn, come along with me and take a look at it through this. We're going to get into that here in a bit, but that's that. So let's transition to that. Actually, I can provide the slide deck for sure. That's not a problem. What's more valuable is this page here, the geistinteractive.com/JS-learning path. This is what I've been talking about here as far as the learning path, about what you can do in FileMaker. And here's the blog post about it, and just how you can go through the journey with me and, do each of this. So like perform actions. Oh, thank you, Kimberly. Perform actions is right here. And I've got, 16 videos that you can go through with the exercise file that you've downloaded, I don't know, right here. And you can walk through it. So I'm going to spend some time in here right now just to show you the ease of use of getting into JavaScript and making it work for you. So I recommend looking through that, downloading the file. The FileMaker file, the file is actually a FileMaker file. It's open, it's unlocked, and there's probably a bug or two in it. So if you find one, you're welcome to let me know what the problem is. So here's the JavaScript Learning Path file. It's got each of the exercise, or each of the, shoot, I'm gonna start that over. I'm not sure what happened there. It's got each of the groupings of exercises. Wait, where'd it go? Hello, where are you?
I'm gonna interrupt briefly. For those who aren't following along in chat, there's a way to maximize the slides, which is pretty easy. You can just go to your Zoom preferences and turn on use dual monitors, and then the slides can become a window you can actually zoom to full size.
Oh.
Back to you, Jeremy.
Okay, thanks. So this file here is meant to help you see the function, the exercises. And this is like I said, it's a FileMaker file. It contains exercises. It contains JavaScript concepts that I will refer to throughout the exercises. As we do an exercise on JavaScript buttons, we can open up this page and learn more about buttons, how to work with them, and someone can do that on their own as well. Array methods, we're going to be using those all the time, is how to loop through an array that we sent from FileMaker to JavaScript. And so anybody who wants to take the time can read through this, but I will lead you through exercises. And then I've got a bunch of resources that we use throughout that, you know, you may want to play with. Like Moment.js is one of the most amazing JavaScript libraries out there, in that it takes a date and it just does anything to it that you want. You can say, I want you to tell me how many days from, you know, what is 7 days from now, or what was 3 years ago, or whatever. And you can add time, subtract time in a JavaScript way. You can format it any way you want. You can work with locales. So I use this a lot, and it's just a resource out there. D3 also does some of that. Yes, Doug, you can get it on my site. It's actually the link above that Kimberly posted in the chat. There's a download this file somewhere.
You know what? I'm there, but somehow I just don't see it.
Right here, where it says "Get prepared."
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a way to get started. If you're on Mac, you need to enable the debugger and FileMaker. Actually, that should say it's in the browser. Beeswax has the only post about it, and the definitive one. I've got a video on just walking through exactly what I'm doing here. By the way, this right here is a web viewer. It's a complete JavaScript app. It's actually a complete add-on called Squares that I built a long time ago. And it just takes records in this system, in a table in here, and it presents them in this way of, you know, of the colors and the sizes. I can go into the configuration, and I can really tell this to point to anything in my file. Like I could say, I'm going to break this, and this is bad. Do I want to do this? Sure, I can do it. So I could just say, you know what, I want you to, oh no, that's right. I don't know. I'm just making this up. But if I go in here, there is an error somewhere. Yeah, I'll just do this quick. So in a heartbeat, I can change this to show something different in my tables. So this is some objectives from a different table. So this is very similar to the add-ons that we built that are almost in product, will be soon. And it allows me to, there we go, okay. Oh, whew. Actually, oh, you know what? Let's just make one more change. I need to tell it. So the way that I set this up is that it's got the ability to, you know, work with themes, so I can update it to be different colors. Or I can say, you know what, I need you to, background, oops, that's the text. So these are all just fields in FileMaker. This is almost exactly how all of the add-ons that we built, there we go, work. So anyway, so that's a web viewer that I built with JavaScript from, you know, just the work that I've been doing as add-ons and as just learning JavaScript in general. All right, so, you know, we'll just do one basic thing here. That's interesting, actually. Oh, you know why? Sorry, I gotta do one more thing. Yep. Destroyed a lot more than I should have. Sort. Final sort order. Okay. There we go. Okay. So in the released videos on this site here, I just walk through one of these exercises per, and we just talk through it. And, you know, we write, for example, which one did I want to do? I wanted to do this one. Okay. So this one here, and I have to pull up my answer key just to make sure I got it. This one is just is an example where we have the HTML over here, and in this case, it produces a table that I have just meticulously created using the table tag and head tag and rows and cell tags. And this helps me to, you know, this displays it over here, and I can type in over here. So what I would do with people is I would run through an exercise where we say, all right, we're gonna build a function that will allow me to put a click event on each one of these cells, so that eventually I could send the data that's in here back to FileMaker, and I could tell FileMaker, a FileMaker script, which row they clicked on or which cell they clicked into. So we would work through it together, and we do that in the video, and we've got the answer here that we'll just click in here for now. And if I run this, then we can, get the functionality to work. So my training, these exercises are meant to walk through this with you in a fairly logical, a small step way. Yes, this is a little bit divorced from reality, but you may actually want to build a table that has navigation names on here. You could easily pull those from FileMaker, and then you want to build, put in a click functionality. So this is the walkthrough that we would do with people. Along the way, as we're working in an exercise, there may be some concepts that we want to study that are specific to this particular activity. So in this case, we're using the JavaScript library jQuery. You don't need to know much about it, but you can always click on this and open it up and learn more about the jQuery and how we're using it. So this is how I would walk through with people the experience of working with JavaScript in a FileMaker app. Questions about this? Okay. If you want, again, follow along with me or find your own learning materials, but this is a good way. I always like this because it's coming from FileMaker. We one of these in particular, run a JavaScript function from FileMaker. So I explain how we can run this function from FileMaker, where we just say run from FM. Actually, I'm going to change this to lowercase r because JavaScript is case sensitive. There we go. All right, so now if I run this, JavaScript is going to be run. So again, working through with you how to do that. So ignore that answer because we work through it together. Again, so yeah, encourage you to try that out. I'm going to move into JavaScript libraries here in a bit, but just want to close this out, this whole idea of a learning path. Does anybody have any more thoughts about this?
Really cool.
Well, that's a given, of course, Matt, but yeah.
No,
This is all free content too?
Yeah, this is all free stuff. Yeah.
This is really, really cool.
I'm so cocky. Sorry about that. No, like I said, I'm a teacher. I really am interested in helping people learn something else, and FileMaker developers can. I'm not sure that we can afford to ignore JavaScript anymore, to be honest. We've reached a point in the FileMaker product where it's just the next step for FileMaker is to somehow get all of this code into the app itself, or allow us to put it in here. Right now, I'm putting everything into fields. I mean, this is actually a web viewer too, but this is all stored in fields. So it's adding extra schema that it's not really necessary. It's unfortunate that we have it. That's the next step for Claris to do with JavaScript. But there's just no reason. I don't think there's a reason to ignore it right now. And that leads me to my next thing, where JavaScript libraries help us to solve a lot of these problems. I showed this recently or in the slides, but this is the Apex library. I have no idea how any of the JavaScript, the library works. I'm gonna copy this right here because this is where the JavaScript is loaded or is stored. here's that function that's running all of the JavaScript, the chart. I have no idea how this works. I don't care because that's not for me to worry about. What I can focus on is finding the options, updating them how I would like them to be updated, to say from bar to line, you know, I want to add some labels to it, maybe put in FFF for the color, and maybe updated this to 20 pixels. So I'm just doing those small things. What did I do wrong? I don't remember. I know what I did. Okay, so it's there. It's just not. It's now just not updating Oh, there we go. Maybe that's it. Maybe I can't have a stacked. Nope. I don't know what I did. All right. Well, that's a good example of. Let's just go back to that and that. Let's see if that works. There we go. That's that. Oh, I know. Okay, that's why it was horizontal. So this is part of the fun, I guess, of experimenting. But again, it's just taking all of the options that this library provides and updating it as we want. So, and I'm going to speak a little bit about this library idea. So here we have the JavaScript library that runs the rendering of the chart, and there's just some script sources here that I've put into my HTML code. I've also put some styling in here. This placeholder text right here in a calculated field gets substituted out, and the actual whatever is in the CSS gets put in here. There's nothing in this field. There's nothing in there right now. I simply create a div element that's got a certain ID, any ID, and then I have all of my functionality written in here. So if I look at the calc field, I can see down here, I can see all of the stuff in this, in the JS function being substituted into the HTML. So these options right here gets passed into that JavaScript library that I showed, that's right here. And then this JavaScript library takes each option and says, okay, what kind of chart do they want? They want a bar chart. So I'm going to render a bar chart. Hopefully if I update that to line, oh, I know why, because the stroke is set to 0 or something. Yeah, here it is, stroke. That should work. There we go. So the JavaScript library is taking all of the options that I have put in there, and it has said, all right, well, it wants a line chart. They want this. For some reason, they want the labels to be that big and that color. It doesn't make any judgment. It just does what I want it to do. And then it renders the chart, and I don't have to do a whole lot of extra work to this. Notice that down here, the x-axis has the months instead of even a date. So this is, I must have changed an option that says, hey, I want you to render the x-axis a different way than I presented you the data. In fact, here's the data. The data comes directly from FileMaker table using the new execute FileMaker data API script step. And I'm just collecting certain pieces of my certain fields. And then the JavaScript is, in this case, it's just rendering this record in the bananas series for this particular month. So I don't have to do I don't have to do much programming at all. I have to fumble with the options and mess them up a little bit, as you've seen, but it's really not, it's completely doable. These JavaScript libraries solve a lot of our problems, provide a lot of functionality in quick ways. So this is an advantage of the JavaScript library. Here's one, for example, Apex charts. This all comes from my Claris Engage session, the on-demand session. So you can check that out. It's on YouTube. Kimberly, would you mind, could you find that in YouTube, Claris's site, and maybe link to that? I'm sorry, I don't have that available here. So this is one of the libraries that I worked with. Here's another one called the Type Ahead. that allows me to type names in a box, and then as I type, it further limits the found set. So imagine I see this like once a week or so, someone asking, how do I create a type ahead kind of feature in FileMaker? You know, this is, how do I create a dwindling value list, I think it's called, right? That we would do in FileMaker. Well, this library called type ahead, it actually comes from Twitter. It actually does the work for me already. So all I have to do is, you know, set up the library. In this case, here's the library right here. I don't know how any of this works, doesn't matter. And I'm passing it some possibilities to say, you know what, I want you to, in this case, min length is 1. So that's the number of characters they type before all of the options pop up. But if I change that to 5, then it takes 5 characters before anything pops up. I could even type in, I think, yep, I could type in my last name and get just those last name ones, just the ones with that. I could even type in, if I go back to, you know, 3 or so, if I type in BRO, I'm going to get anything, any word, any names with BRO in any part of them, in any part of the name. So thank you, Kimberly. So this is another library that it doesn't take a whole lot of time to get working in your system. Now, yeah, right here, I'm actually using my JavaScript skills to do some work. This is a little bit confusing. I go into it in my video, but what am I saying here? I'm saying, oh, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying, I want you to search in a certain field. So my data looks like this. It's got first name, last name, primary key, address. I think there's a city. Yeah. So if I say, okay, I want you, in my case, I built this using my basic JavaScript skills to work with with a certain field. So I could come in here and I could say, you know what, I don't want you to search in the name. I want you to search in the city field. So now if I type in Jeremy, I'm going to get anybody. Actually, it looks like we're using the name and it's using the city. So I could type in Denver and I'm getting all of the people that live in Denver and just their first names, for example. So, you know, for some reason, I may want that. It's just how I set it up right here. Actually, I did set it up. I said, whatever field they chose down here, and this is a developer choosing it, use that field and show the first name. You know, but I could easily say, I also want you to show the last name. So I could just do some extra work and say, all right, Denver. Now I see all of the people, first name and last name, who lives in Denver. All right. So compared to what we could build in FileMaker with a dwindling value list, this does not take a lot of time. Yes, you're going to mess up the options and you're going to have to revert back a little while, but no, building this is not going to take much. It's going to take a fraction of the time that you would probably have to build that in a FileMaker way. This is that survey that I showed you. In this case, it's just, I've got it set up so that every time I was fumbling with this and I messed something up. Let's change that option back to 1. So hopefully this will work. All right, so now I can drag it, and wherever I drag it, I get that information sent back to FileMaker. I get the name of the slider that the user was touching and the value that they landed on. This library has the option to you have a start and a stop. What do they call these? Slider, I don't know. I forget the name of them now. But this is the possibilities. So here's my data. Here are 9 questions. If I were to get rid of you know, all but three of them, then now I have 3 survey questions. So that didn't take long. That didn't take long to adjust. So this really can adjust to any found set that I have in my system that I want to provide, that I want to display. I don't need to get into the nitty gritty details, but I just will point out again right here that I'm using my basic JavaScript skills. I'm using a built-in function called for each in JavaScript to loop through each of the items in that data field, in this data field here. Let's put those back. And I'm saying for each one of these, I want you to do this work. That is, I want you to create a slider that starts at this point, that ends at this point, that has this text right here. So all of this is my basic JavaScript skills in creating a JavaScript function that will run and create a slider for each one of these. Oh, that's interesting, Alan. I had never heard of that. I've never seen that before. You have to maybe ping me after or send me a question, email through support at Geist Interactive. Anyway, so this is my point. You use some basic JavaScript to just do amazing things and give your customers some amazing solutions to problems. All right. I'll do a couple more here. We're going good. This is an interesting one in that it's using JavaScript. I probably broke everything now because I was playing with something. Yeah, shoot. Here, I'll just fix this. Boom. There we go. All right. I should have fixed this before. Sorry about that. So I think I'm using, dang it. Yeah, you know what? Here, I know what to do. Just a second. I'm going to go back to the finance. There we go. All right. Good thing I had it zipped up. All right. So this is an example of using a JavaScript library called finance.js that's really just got a bunch of functions in it that performs financial functions that we don't have in FileMaker, like net present value or rate of return, return on investment, all that stuff. So somebody figured out how to use JavaScript to write those. I didn't do it. I just found it. And then I can use my web viewer that's off screen here, and I can call any one of these using the new script step and the new function to say, for this was just my demo, for each of these values, I'm passing in a couple numbers, whatever it requires, and I'm returning the result back. In this case, for leverage ratio, I'm sending in these 3 values, liabilities, debts, and income, and I'm getting back the result as determined by that function. So this is an example of using JavaScript to just do calculations, and using a JavaScript library or using your own JavaScript skills to, JavaScript generally is so much faster than FileMaker. If you were trying to do a huge script that did a calculation, or you tried to create a calculated field that did this. So generally JavaScript will be a lot faster, and we can now use it to do some calculations and return the result back to FileMaker. All right.
Do you have anything that demonstrates sorting with JavaScript?
That
That's like the most time-consuming thing ever in FileMaker. Yeah.
Thanks, Alexi. Do I have something that does sorting? Well, I mean, I'm trying to think. The whole no, I don't. Sorry, but
that's cool.
I do have. Let's see if I can find it.
Couldn't you conceivably display JSON in a web viewer as data and then sort that data in the table view, in the JavaScript table view, I should say.
Very much so. I would 100% recommend that if it's a huge amount of work, if it's a huge amount of
If
data.
the sort is like gonna take 15 seconds in FileMaker and takes like a split second in JavaScript, that might certainly be a use case. Okay.
Here's the closest example I have, and this is kind of a prototype of the add-on that's going to be part of the product. In that, I've got some sample data that's really just I'll just go to table view here. It's different tasks with each one of them has a status and an assignee and some other things like a sort value and styles and stuff. So what I had to do is I had to use my JavaScript skills, and it's already baked in, so I can't really show you the code. But I had to use my JavaScript skills to say, all right, take all of those records in any order, because I can't rely on the FileMaker developer or the user to know how to sort these properly. So it comes in just like this, where it's all mixed up, and FileMaker knows or my JavaScript skills knows exactly how to sort them and rearrange them to fit what the JavaScript library needs. When we don't sell it anymore, but we did have a Kanban product, and Todd tasked me with building it. And I built this huge, complex FileMaker script that did this same work. And then when we went to build the add-ons, Todd said, no way, we're not doing that. You need to figure out how to get JavaScript to do this. So I did, and it's much better. And I'm so happy that you can pass it anything and it will sort it correctly. If I think I can do this here. I'm just going to kind of styles. Yeah, don't I have that? So anyway, so that's the closest I can give you right now, without even showing you the code. But it was just using, I had to map through each one of these using the JavaScript method map, and I had to say, this is what the JavaScript function did. And this sounds very familiar with what a script would do. It says, all right, for each record, for record 1, what status is it in? Okay, so I'm going to put it in a bigger JSON object in this status. And what sort value should it be? So how far down the status, that object, should it be placed? In this case, it's the 9th position. All right, let's go to the next one. It's inactive. It's this time it's in the, that's where it needs to be, and so forth. So like I said, I wrote a very complex script to do this, in FileMaker, and it takes a long time. So we stopped selling that product. Now JavaScript can handle it faster. So I hope that helps, answer some of your question. But
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I see this as a great example of combining our work with virtual lists and JavaScript. You could use JavaScript to take this unsorted found set and sort it correctly as an array, throw it into a virtual list setup, and it's displayed in the correct order that you want. So there's a lot of amazing possibilities with this. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, that's kind of, we'll do one more, just, I'm doing my, let's see, where is it? Oh, I'll just show you this because this is fun. This is a dashboard that I built for a client using fake data, and it's a little bit crazy right now, but this is a JavaScript library that can take, in this case, it takes about 1,000 records, exactly 1,000 records, and it will allow me to organize them into great data point graphs. Here's an example of the data. There's a lot of keys in this object representing one record, and using this JavaScript library, I can run a chart on any one of these keys, and I can let JavaScript add all of these up across all 1,000 records. For the client, this is just a sampling. he's working with 25,000 records in this chart, in this dashboard, and JavaScript is handling all the summarization of any particular field that I ask it to do. So, and again, I demonstrate this pretty well, but there are 1,000 records. One record, or 103 records, have the AP person in one of the properties. Imagine having to do this for, having to do this in FileMaker, try to summarize this and summarize this one and summarize this one and this one at the same time. So this library, it's called DCJS, just gives me a lot of functionality with pretty limited, well, this is the most complex thing that I've ever done, like this one right here. I struggled with this for a long time to get this to work. He wanted income, expense, profit, and then a margin, which is a different kind of chart here, on here with I don't think I could have done this in FileMaker. What's cool is if I click on this person's information, I can filter out all of the charts in this dashboard with that particular user's information. It's DCJS. It uses D3JS. It actually uses something called cross filter as well. This is the function that I wrote, and it's really long. It's the app that I wrote. It's really long, but to quickly try to break it down, I don't know. Here's a date chart. Again, this is just options. I'm telling the library, I'm saying, all right, I want you to render a date chart. I want you to find the element on my HTML with the ID of days. And I want you to render it using this data right here in these two variables. And I want you to make it that high and so forth. So, and I want you to format the data in a certain way that I ask for. So again, a lot of time put into this, but I think it saves, overall, I think it saves time because I'm able to build all of these pretty quickly and provide a lot more functionality than before. All right.
That is impressive.
So I'll just finish off by saying, it's like I said, this is definitely my bias, but I'm not sure we can really ignore JavaScript anymore because it gives us more functionality than we could hope to do quickly in FileMaker, like I'm demonstrating here. RADY, and it allows me to just provide a nice, awesome interface for people that they can that they've come to expect over as they work in the web all the time. So yeah, so I would explore that. I would give some time to it and use my path or use other people's ideas about what to learn, but I think I've identified what we could focus on. So, all right. Please throw me some questions.
I have a question. When you use this approach, JavaScript in a web viewer, if you serve it up through FileMaker server over WebDirect, do you expect any significant performance hit for it to be web technology being sort of filtered and re-rendered as a web technology?
No, because the FileMaker, the way that FileMaker 19 is built, they solved almost every single one of the WebDirect problems. It's going to work in WebDirect. All of this functionality will work. Clicking on them, there's been no issues now that we're in FileMaker 19 with using WebDirect.
Great, thank you.
Sam, these files, let's see if I can find them. They're on my site somewhere. I'm trying to think where they are. Geist Interactive. What other questions do you have? I'll get you the this in a bit here. Where is that? let's see. Is it in a blog? I forget. People have been downloading it, so I know it's around somewhere. Where did I put that? I don't know. Send me a. Where did I put that? Oh, you know what? It's in the community somewhere. I wonder if they ported that to the YouTube channel. Let's see here. To run this. I'm not going to. Sorry, it's me talking. Nope, they didn't. So I will find it, and I will. Sam, if you could send me an email, I will. I don't know, because other people may want it. I'll tell you what. If you're on Twitter, look for me on Twitter at Geist Interactive, and I'll put a link to it there. All right.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes.
Here. Question, and I'm just kind of making my way through your file, and thank you for all of this. This is awesome. I have an application where I'm trying to use FileMaker and the web viewer with a real web page in there that I want the user to interact with, and I want to be able to, in some cases, help. They need to go through a CAPTCHA, or they need to do something, or move to a particular field, control the DOM, or where the cursor is, and so on. Is some of that included in here as well? I see you've got a section on manipulating the window, the web viewer.
Yeah. So part of what we want to do every day is build interfaces that interact, that they can click on and something changes over here, right?
Right.
Is that what yeah. So I think I have this highlight exercise. I wonder if it's working. Let's see. It's been a while since I've touched this. So if I run the code, oh yeah. Okay. So, I can just get in, I can take some data right here, two pieces of data, and I can compare them and display it on the screen. Perfect. So yes, there are, let's see if I have any other ones off the top of my head. Let's see, what's this? I don't remember what this is. Run the code. I don't know what this does. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yes. Excellent. Yes, that's the point. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's what I was supposed to be doing. But yeah, that's the point, is to some of these exercises talk about updating the web viewer itself so that it can be a place where people click on and data changes based on, something that's happening. So, yeah.
Right. We can use an insert from URL or capture the DOM, the data on the screen, and bring it back into FileMaker. Parse it.
Yep. Yeah. Mark asked the question, if you have a particular control in mind, slider, calendar, where does one go to look for useful libraries? The answer is the internet, Google. I really just type in cool JavaScript libraries or slider JavaScript libraries, and I find what is out there. Every once in a while, I remember that I was supposed to be working on an exhaustive list of those kinds of things for FileMaker developers, but I forget it. So I'll be sure, and I'll try to get that list going of things that I have shown, libraries that I have looked through to see what, if it's useful or not. So do I have trust issues? Here's how I determine if a library is good. If it's on GitHub and if it's starred thousands of times, and if, it's in active development, I will trust those more. That's the great, I skipped over that, but that's the amazing thing about using a JavaScript library, is that this has been tested thousands of times. Thousands of bugs have poured in, and they fixed it. The developers have fixed it, and, they're actively working on it. So, as Todd and I have said in a recent podcast episode, if you listen to that, JavaScript can't mess with your data, with your file structure, because only scripts can do that. JavaScript in a web viewer can't. So we have trust in that it's not going to touch our data. Only a script can delete data, truncate tables and so forth, add accounts and such. So JavaScript can't do any of that. So until this JavaScript runs a script, but that you have in your system, it's not going to be a problem. So I don't have trust issues, mostly if they're in active development. If it's been a retired or archived library, then I probably won't use it. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's good for now. There's a lot of information. You can always reach out. You can always reach out to me and ask me for specifics, jeremy@geistinteractive.com, or support, and be glad to give you some advice on what to do. Ryan asked, how do you pass multiple records in a found set as JSON to your JavaScript? That's actually part of what I, in my playground, in my learning path file, is loading data, where we load data from a function into something, into the JavaScript. So we can you can talk through that. Actually, it's right here. So that's how you do it, Ryan. We can walk through that together in that and learn how to do it. All right.
That's some excellent stuff.
Cool.
You've been showing all this amazing things. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really encourage everybody. Does everybody raise your hand if you're going to take a look at JavaScript, or have been, or whatever? And
I downloaded stuff while we were talking, or while you were talking. I didn't start playing with it though. I paid attention.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
But yeah, I love that you've actually made videos to go in much more depth on all this stuff.
Yeah, and I'm working on the other ones, so you can get through the first ones and then take a pause and we'll get on to the next ones in a bit. But yeah, and I actually kind of went backwards in that I started with those JavaScript libraries and I got those to work before I actually knew what I was doing in JavaScript. I think people can learn them in tandem and really, get a data table, get a list view going in JavaScript really easily, but then also turn to your JavaScript skills and focus on those. So, hi Kermit. Yep, he's back there somewhere. So, cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This was fantastic. I fully intend to go through your exercises.
And I'll make sure he does.
All right. Yeah.
I'm not going to have to worry about it. I know he's going to, because he wants to. All right. Any other? I guess we've got. Oh, we're pretty much at time. But if anybody has any other generic FileMaker stuff, I'll stick around for a little bit. Anything not related to JavaScript?
I'm going to stick on for 1 minute, but I'm going to let my dogs out, so I'll be right back.
Okay. It's so great to see. Since we've switched to Zoom, we see people from all over the country, even a token person from Canada. I mean, that's Doug, at least one. And I think Shin was on or is on. Yeah, from Japan, which is pretty great because it's a very different time there. Carl's on from far away too. So, yeah.
I have a question for you, Matt.
Yes.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
I am. Yeah, I can hear you, Matt.
Oh, I see. I turned my my volume down. Sorry about that. I have to set up a API that requires the older OAuth 1.0, and you have to sign those requests with a signature that's encoded in a special way. Have you done that with FileMaker, or would you use like a JavaScript library? I know there's JavaScript libraries that'll do that, that'll give you that encoded signature that you need, and then you could just probably add it to your request. But
I haven't done that. So you're talking about like using authentication to FileMaker server, that using a different method?
No, authentication to a different API.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that requires the OAuth 1.0 for this particular API, and it's with those you have to sign the request a certain way, and so I was wondering if you or anybody else has.
Yeah, I haven't got experience that. I don't know if Carl might, Elizabeth, you might. I don't know if anybody else would have something to weigh in there. I guess my first question is, does that reduce the security? The client probably does know about that, and I don't know if they're thinking about that or if they care. Like,
In the 1.0?
yeah, that's like, for example, if a client only supported an older version of SSL, like the known hacked version of SSL,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, really want to do that. I'd want to find some other way. But if there's no other way, like for the API, then
Yeah, right. This particular API, that's
Yeah.
the way you authorize your request, get your access token, and
yeah,
so
then you got to do what they support.
yeah.
I don't know. Anyone have a thought on that?
Is it problematic because it requires a callback URL and there's no way to do that natively with FileMaker?
No.
What's
Just,
the current challenge mainly with it?
Creating the signature.
Oh, Chris, I forgot his last name. Matt, what's Chris's last name?
Chris Irvine?
Chris Irvine has done
might
that with eBay and AWS. Do you know Chris Irvine?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, I can ask him and get back to you if he has experience with that.
Oh, that would be really cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Everyone who's still using, or who is using FileMaker 19 and fully switched over? Pretty much everyone at this point. I guess I should have asked if anybody was still using an older version. But also questions like that maybe would have been asked earlier. Larry, you're not using 19 yet? You're on mute.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Oh, hold on.
And Michael says he's using 17 and 18.
Yeah, I think we have 19 on our live server and on our development server now. So I think we're fully moved over.
One tricky thing about it is that in all previous versions of FileMaker going back a ways, there's been 2 versions on either side. The exit doors are the left and the right. And that changed with 19. You cannot run FileMaker Pro 19 will not see FileMaker Server 17, and FileMaker Server 19 will not allow FileMaker 17 clients to connect. So either way, it's not compatible. So FileMaker 18 and 19 get along, but nothing older than that.
With the releases coming out supposedly sooner, Matt, or is that going to change? Or if they're going to come out with 2 releases in a year, I mean, is it only
4? They're
4?
supposed to be doing, they're supposed to be doing like quarterly or much more frequent releases of smaller versions of things.
Right. So is that going to change that 2 version thing?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be, I'm guessing it's going to be like a 2-year or a 1-year thing. Or maybe they'll do whole numbers every year. So maybe there'll be like a 19.0, 1, 2, and 3 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know. I don't know if they've actually publicly said what their version numbering scheme is going to be. But I definitely saw this was a pretty big change from what they did. And I think it's a good change because for security, keeping everybody on a more recent platform is good for all of us. Better for the clients for security. It does mean that you can't use, like we've had to get rid of iPads that can't run FileMaker Go because they can't run an iOS version that will actually support FileMaker Go 19. And the same thing is true for some of the older Macs and some of the older PCs. They won't run an OS that will support FileMaker. So anyway, that's an issue for some of our clients.
We haven't done any auto updates at this juncture yet, right? We're 6 months in and none of that's happened.
Yeah, there actually hasn't been a patch to server yet. Wow, so Alan, you still use clients with FileMaker 14? I'd have a hard time. We have a couple, I think, but it's really hard. It's really especially hard if you have clients who are running FileMaker 14. As a developer, you have to go to some older version to even write code. You have to go back to FileMaker 16 to even work on their system.
Hey Matt, I've got one for you. If you are installing FileMaker Server 18, I'm not sure. I can't remember if this feature was in 17. Startup restoration. It's definitely in 18.
Oh.
It's on by default in 18. It's off by default in 19. So you don't have
Correct.
to. Pardon?
I was just saying, don't get Matt started on this topic. I'm joking, but
Yeah,
I won't talk about it too long.
you want to make sure that you turn off startup restoration because it can cause files to crash and corruption and like really wreck your
Yep.
file. So you in FM, if in the command line, it's like FMS admin.
I bet Carl knows it by heart.
Server prep, set server.
I used it so much.
Startup restoration enabled equals false. You have to make sure that, just Google it, you'll find it. Look for set server prefs.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
and
exposed
find
in
the options.
UI.
And you have to make sure that that's turned off in the command line. Otherwise, you could be in for a world of hurt.
Yep. Yeah, it's a fairly rare bug, but I mean, I think we had 3 clients who got bit by it with permanent data loss.
Wow.
So it's a really catastrophic one when it bites you. That clearly made it onto FileMaker's radar for upcoming versions of 19, where they're addressing that. I think they actually went down a different road. I can't say too much because there's ETS issues and stuff like that. But I think it's really interesting. They tried to solve the problem and they bundled, for some reason, startup restoration log with a performance improvement feature that allowed a lot more multi-threading. And for some reason, those got turned on and off with the same switch rather than being independent features. And they found some other way to improve the speed, which I think is going to be coming in a future version, which is going to give us a similar, very large speed boost when you have a really busy server. Oh yeah, and there's the command FMS admin set server prefs, blah, 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 in chat.
Yeah, that's it.
Any more? We'll take 2 more questions and that's it. And they have to be short ones.
You need to restart after running that.
I think, yeah, I don't know if you have to just, yeah, you probably have to stop and start the server, but maybe not reboot the whole computer.
Yeah.
Service restart, yep. Nothing else? All right. Well, we have a few speakers, so we'll have formats kind of like this meeting for the upcoming ones, where we have someone who prepares and thinks about something and cares about something deeply, just as Jeremy does, talking to us at upcoming meetups, which is great. And I think for the time being, we're also going to keep them during the day, because it seems like during COVID, protecting evenings is more important than taking time away from your boss who doesn't really give a damn anyway during the day. Wait, was that out loud? That was supposed to be in my inner voice. I think I'm talking to at least a few bosses on this call right here who definitely would give a damn, but also a lot of the bosses don't have employees. So I'm just going to stop right now. Anyway, so I'm really looking forward to those upcoming meetings. You can tell that I haven't had a chance to really exercise humor sufficiently to a group, and I have to actually let that out somewhere. As those of you who've had to endure me in the room at an actual meetup in the past know. So I don't know, any other questions, last minute thoughts before we?
Hey, Matt, are any of those going to be about specifically building add-ons, or have I missed that one already?
I don't know, but man, that's a good idea. We've been doing a ton of work with add-ons too. Kim, do you happen to know? You can, I think all the ones are posted on our meetup schedule, and Eleanor at our office has been working with all the speakers to schedule them all. There's a couple of really cool tips and things you can learn, and I think Carl has written about it. We have a blog post about it, about add-ons.
So the next 2 presentations have been posted, but I'm fairly confident Eleanor has scheduled up through March. I just don't know what they are. But the next 2, I will go ahead and post on the chat for everybody to see.
I'll give you guys a little preview of what's coming. Normally I wouldn't post this. I'm going to stop recording and then I'll say that's what I'll do.